Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so something real quick that I thought was really funny. I was working on something and I was doing this, and I noticed that I looked exactly like Viswanathan Anand down here, and I was like, it was funny. Anyways, appreciate you guys coming through, checking out my video. I got another game for you from the Airthings Open. And thing I think that's interesting about this is the fact that like Airthings is like an air quality control. I believe it's an air quality control company. So what they're actually doing is they're actually, kind of letting you know in the bottom half of the screen, kind of like what the air quality and stuff like that is, where the players are at exactly. So it's kind of interesting. But as always, at the end of the video, I have the answer to the previous chess puzzle, and I have a new chess puzzle for you for all those diehard fans. And I think it's really interesting. Look at this here. Come on. There we go. Okay. I think it's really interesting because I actually, at a certain point in the game, have the same concept as the chess puzzle that I gave you guys last time. So it's like, it was super interesting when I got to that point. But as always, if you guys like my content, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, please. My last video that I just posted did very, very good so far. So I really appreciate everybody that's been watching. Salamat, shukran, merci beaucoup, muchas gracias, people. And if I forgot your language, left it out, let me know, and I will specifically mention in the next video. Bam. Okay, so if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we have for this game. Get the volume turned up here. Bizam. Okay. All right, so we have E4. We have E5, and I'm gonna run through these moves because we're in theory for a long time. So we have knight to F3, we got knight to F6. So we have the Petrov's defense, or it's also known as the Russian game. So it's kind of fitting that we have Alexander Grischuk, that is from Russia, and they're in a Russian game. And so we have knight takes E5, we got D6, knight back to F3, knight takes E4, we got D4, D5. Bishop to D3. So we have bishop to D6. We have castles for white, castles for black. We have C4, got C6, knight to C3. So knight takes C3. We got pawn takes C3, pawn takes C4. We have bishop takes C4. And so basically everything that I've done so far has been pretty much like top move main lines. And so, we have a while before we get into, a novelty of the game. As you guys know, there are certain openings that have been played, for hundreds of years. Most of them have. And so there's a lot of theory involved in this particular opening. And it gets pretty interesting. It does definitely get pretty interesting. But in continuing, we have bishop to F5. So we have black, just developing some more pieces here. So we have bishop to D5. We have queen to A5. Of course, you're not able to move this pawn because it is pinned by this bishop. So you either have to move the queen somewhere or, like put bishop back to block. But, once we've developed our bishop to D6, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to back it up. So we got queen to A5. And so we have knight to H4. And so bishop back to E6. So we have bishop takes E6. We got queen takes G5. We have knight back to F3. Nice little intermezzo, getting a little tempo on this queen here. And so the queen just, retreats back to where it came from, queen to A5. So we have bishop back to B3. And now we're at a point in the video where if you want to pause it and, see what, if you were black, what would you play in this position? Yeah, I'm just curious to see what people will come up with. It looks like there might be some weaknesses somewhere in the position. So I'm curious to see kind of where people eyes have gone to. So like I said, if you want to go ahead and pause it real quick and see if you can see what you would do as black, what looks scrumptious or what looks like a delicious move, go ahead and pause it and we'll catch up with you in a minute. Bam. Okay, cool. And so to show you what was played in the game, which is the tip top move. It's one of the few moves that you can actually play in a position that's actually good because black is actually kind of in a pretty critical position. And so we did have knight to D7 in the game. and it is the best possible move for the position. So backing up here, I'm curious how many of you would have turned into a Yasser Sirawan and went pawn grubbing and picked queen takes c3. Now, it looks like you're just winning a clear pawn because you're thinking like, okay, there's not really any threats to black. You know, it kind of just seems like you can just, you know, go ahead and grab a pawn and then you're up a pawn, right? Well, unfortunately, the way that the position is right now, you are too underdeveloped as black, and your king is actually too vulnerable to actually capture this pawn. And it is because of the move knight to g5. Now, the problem with knight to g5 is the fact that you have this knight now attacking this pawn. You have this bishop attacking this pawn, and the queen is a little bit misplaced. Also, what you have in this situation is you don't have your knight or your rook developed on your queen side. So the problem is you're actually able to sacrifice a piece in this position in the hopes of getting it back. So one of the best moves in a position after you were to, you know, kind of overreach with the queen move would be moving queen back to a5, trying to see if you can't try to, you know, attack this knight here. And now after bishop takes f7, there are only two moves. You know, of course, there's rook takes and then there's king over. So let's take a look at both of those real quick. So if we did have rook takes f7, we would go ahead and take back with the knight taking f7, and then the king would come to f7, and then you'd see queen to b3 with check. And like I said, the problem before is the fact that this rook and this knight are undeveloped, and this pawn is vulnerable. So once you're checking the king, you're also attacking this pawn, and once the king moves anywhere, you're going to be taking this pawn here, and the rook is completely undefendable. So you've taken advantage of black's lack in development. And so if we go back real quick, if you were to take, if you were to just move over with the king and say, oh, I'm just going to sidestep everything, a nice little tactic, which I think a lot of people have seen in tactics trainers on chess.com or Chess Tempo or Elite Chess or wherever, you got the queen just coming to h5. And then, of course, as you guys know, h6 doesn't really fully defend because the pawn is pinned. You know, you have the ability to try to wiggle the queen over and stuff like that in a lot of cases. So, like I was telling you guys before, the chess puzzle that I gave you guys the last video, it was an interference, and so basically you were able to try to put a piece in the way and disconnect a piece from either a square or another piece, and so you would have the super beautiful d5 to interpose this pawn in the way of, because you know right now this queen is attacking this knight, so you can't really try to finagle your way up here, and so you know, you're pushing this pawn in the way and really giving it up to disconnect the queen from being able to defend laterally. And, you know, of course, the queen can't take because you have bishop takes here, right? And so it would force the bishop back to e7. And then after knight to e6, the computer actually suggests knight to d7, just completely giving away the knight on the exchange because you have to, you know, the queen's coming here and you have to prevent this checkmate. So you're going to be losing a rook anyway. So, you know, the computer just basically just says, go ahead and just develop the knight. And you're going to get rid of, you know, back rank issues because now you have your rooks connected. So as you guys can see, it's very, very important that you develop your pieces. And it doesn't matter if you're the lowest beginner or you're all the way to the tip top. As you can see, if Wesley So hadn't seen this, which, you know, Wesley So is one of the best players in the world. If he hadn't seen this, he might would have very well went down this variation because you know for a fact that this is, you know, Grischuk saw this. So, you know, and this is why you don't see the novelty of queen takes c3 because this is where you would end up at. So going back to what we had, like I said, we did have knight to d7. Which is super beautiful. So we have queen to d3. So after, you know, you went ahead and set that trap, you see black didn't go for it. You see queen to d3. And so knight comes to f6, just perfectly defending the king side. And so we have rook f to e1, rook a to e8. We got g3, go ahead and creating luft for the king here. Same thing as black, g6. And so we have h4, king to g7, and we have knight to g5. And this is actually the novelty of the game. So 0 games have been played to this variation. The other games that I saw, they had king to g2, so this exact position has been seen before, but knight to g5 hasn't been seen. Just like I said before, you know, with the variations and stuff I showed you, at the end of the day, you know, you're still kind of trying to put a lot of pressure on this F2 square. So as you guys can see, no matter what point of the game you are, the F7 and F2 squares are very, very vulnerable. And you guys saw that in my last video too, with F2 being super, super, vulnerable. And because like I said, you know, the king is the only one defending those squares. So, you know, that's not the best piece that you want to have defending a square. And so we have queen back to D8. We got king to G2. So we have H6, just knocking that knight away. So we have knight to E4. Knight takes E4, rook takes E4, rook takes E4. We got queen takes E4. And so we see rook to E8, and we got queen back to F3. So queen to F6, kind of forcing a trade here. And so we see queen takes F6, king takes F6. We got king to F1. We got H5. And so you see you have the, you know, perfectly symmetrical situation over here. And, you know, you also have like a little pawn freeze over here with these two pawns getting frozen by that one. And I'll put that up in the top right-hand corner for you guys that haven't seen that video that I made on that. And so we see rook to E1, rook takes E1, king takes E1, and we have C5. And so as you guys can see, a lot of you guys that do play chess and are familiar with like basic chess end games, you know, opposite color bishops are like almost notoriously drawn. That should be something that you guys should be recognizing in this particular position. That it's going to be very hard for either side to really win. So we have D takes C5, bishop takes C5. We got A4, just trying to at least put a pawn on an opposite colored square than the opponent's bishop. So we have A5, king to E2, and we got B6, bishop to C4. So we have bishop to D6, we got bishop to B5, bishop to C5, bishop to C4, bishop back to D6, bishop to B5, bishop to C5, and we have bishop back to C4. And as you guys can see, we have a draw by threefold repetition. So like I said, you know, bishops with opposite colors are very, very drawn usually. If you are not doing very good in the game, and you can possibly try to get into a, sacrifice something to get into an opposite color bishop's game, then you have the ability to draw. Keep that in mind when you play your games, but that is the game. And like I said earlier on, the thing that was very interesting to me was the fact, if I just go back in the game for you guys real quick so that you guys see exactly what I'm talking about. When we were in this position here, where H6 was trying to stop going into the alternate variation, and we saw this move D5. Like I said, it perfectly goes with, to give you guys the answer to this chess puzzle that I had before. Like I said, I kind of gave you guys a little hint. If there's a way that you can try to either deflect the queen or, disconnect, because the checkmate is on this square, and that goes back to what I said before, the F2, F7 square. This square is very, very vulnerable right here. So a lot of you guys, I think, would have either come up with rook to D6 or rook to E7. Now, I personally, without like really looking at it a lot, giving it a lot of thought, I was thinking initially, just glancing at it, that it was rook to D6, because rook to D6 would disconnect the queen from this square, and then you would be able to deliver check. And then I was thinking this was going to be a checkmate, but I didn't look at it for very long. I just kind of glanced at it real quick, and that was just the first thing that kind of popped in my mind. Now, you guys will understand, like, whenever you're doing tactics and stuff, when you're playing your games, you're getting stronger and stronger, that, without even really assessing a position, certain moves are going to just kind of pop into your mind. So I had the right kind of idea going, but I just didn't pick the right move. And the right move is rook to E7. And so the problem with this particular situation is the fact that now the queen is disconnected from this square, and the queen is going to have to move. So either the queen moves here or, tries to keep connection. It's going to be checkmate here. So that's the main problem that the queen has. So the queen is going to need to take, but after queen to D5 with check, the only thing the queen can do is move in the way, and then you're going to be delivering checkmate. So there really was no way to avoid this checkmate. And going to the next video that I have, or the next puzzle that I have for you guys, I think you guys are going to get this one pretty easy, because it's very, very similar. And so what you guys will see, like in a lot of, chess tactics and stuff like that, and when you play your games, these patterns become like very, very repetitive, and you start to see things that you didn't see before because you're familiar with a certain motif. But I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I will see you guys next time. I'm going to try to see what other games I can get from this Airthings Open. But I appreciate you guys coming through. Subscribe and like, leave me some comments. And I will see you guys next time. I appreciate it.